National Geographic leverages the power of science, exploration, education, and storytelling to uncover and protect some of the world's greatest wonders. The lost city of Machu Picchu, the Titanic.
Sucker exists!
Unraveling the origins of mankind. Spearheading research on chimpanzees.
The fascinating thing is that so many of the gestures used by the chimps are the same as ours.
Since its founding in 1888, National Geographic has provided more than 14,000 research grants, supporting adventurers, scientists, educators, conservationists, and other change-makers around the world. Nat Geo explorers go further, dig deeper, and push harder to change something much bigger than themselves. There's a place for them to share their adventures and dreams. It's called the Spark. It's a forum, and it's also an opportunity to inspire a new generation. Follow me as I walk you through my most exciting moments as a National Geographic explorer. Ever since my quest to find the tomb of Genghis Khan in Mongolia, which started in 2009, I've been using cutting-edge technology to expand our knowledge of ancient civilizations.
Check that out, I can actually fly through both worlds now. Today's world, and then the secret ancient world.
Lasers that scan deserts, strip away dense jungle canopy, and scour the oceans to uncover the worlds beneath.
We're wading into uncharted waters.
That's what a real lost city looks like.
Join me on this exciting quest across space and time.
Sumire!
はい、
元気だった？
元気だったよ。
本当に？
アイクさんは？
元気しかないね。
元気しかない。
いや元気すぎて逆に困ってますわ。
あ、そうなんだ。じゃあ今日もよろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。Oh!
Oh!
There's Albert!
Albert!
There I am, in the jungle.
Once again today, we are back in the jungle!
Wow!
I know,
So great.
Isn't this crazy?
Yeah.
But actually, in reality, I'm in Los Angeles, you're in Tokyo, and this is just really incredible film technology that allows us to be here in this wilderness.
Together.
Yeah.
This virtual wilderness. Yeah. It's so good to see you guys again. Are you ready for a little bit more exploring?
Yes,
Where are you going to
that's
take
what
us today?
it's
I don't know. Maybe, I was thinking maybe a little bit back, not only into the jungle, but also maybe into a bit of my own history. I wanted to tell you guys about how I became an explorer.
Oh.
Maybe there's other explorers out there that are ready to take the same leap.
That sounds fascinating. But what is it really about, you're exploring?
Well, I think it's something that's in everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's about curiosity. It's about taking that leap into the unknown and trying to see just really what's there, and I think that's kind of already born in all of us. It's just about letting it loose.
Mm-hmm. Albert, what was your first big adventure?
Yeah.
I guess what I'm probably most known for is the work I did in Mongolia for about 3 or 4 years, searching for this tomb out there. But, first I want to tell you guys a little bit more about my own backstory and how I got there, because it starts right from the beginning. You guys ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, into my past. Here we go.
I was born in Santa Cruz, California in 1981, the son of an astrophysicist and a musician. Surrounded by scientists in my early years, I stared into microscopes and quickly got interested in science. I traveled the world with my parents, I was raised in the US, the UK, and other parts of the world. My family migrated to the US from China, but my grandpa used to tell me that our ancestors had come from further north, maybe somewhere close to Mongolia. In 2006, I was studying material science in graduate school, wanting to know more about my roots at the same time. I headed to Beijing and boarded the Trans-Siberian Railway.
My plan was to go to Mongolia and buy a horse, to ride through the countryside and live with the nomads.
I carried with me only a change of clothes and a GPS.
The more I'd hear I was crazy, the more I wanted to prove everybody wrong.
So I crossed the border into Mongolia. There I met a family that was willing to take me in. They even gave me a horse. That's when I learned about Genghis Khan. Many people think of him as a cruel conqueror, but in Mongolia, he's a national hero. I found out that his tomb could be found somewhere in a zone that is off limits to ordinary citizens. I became haunted by this mystery.
I mean, it's a personal challenge that I've created for myself.
3 years later, I headed back to Mongolia with a team. It was my first adventure as a National Geographic explorer. We were able to track down a spot that I believe could be the tomb.
So, Albert, the expedition to Mongolia marked the beginning of your life as an explorer, correct?
Yeah, that's right. My grandfather always said that we came from the north. I didn't really know what that meant. I grew up in California, so at some point in my life, I just started wanting to find out what that really meant. That's why I started traveling. I guess that happens to a lot of people, right? I mean, I'm sure you both have had times where, you know, going to Japan and living there, you've contemplated your own identities, right?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's true.
Definitely.
I mean, I was born Manhattan, New York, then moved to the West Coast, Washington State, and ended up here in Japan. And I love it. I mean, I love the culture, I love the country, and me doing Japanese comedy, it's just like, it's like a dream. But then, you know, my appearance as a, you know, African American, it's kind of the point of view that I see in Japanese culture is different from just a normal Japanese person, you know? So, yeah, I think about that sometimes, you know, my identity and, yeah. You know?
I bet. And what about you, Samira? You were living in Hawaii for a while, right?
Right.
And then you moved
and I
to
moved
Japan?
back to Japan. So I was born in Japan and then moved to Hawaii, and I came back to Japan. So every time I left and started up again somewhere else, I had to adapt. I felt super out of place. I sometimes was treated, you know, like a foreigner, even when I am Japanese, just because I look a little different or I spoke English or, yeah, so it's always been, you know, I think a lot of bicultural, bilingual people have that.
Have experience.
Yeah,
that.
experience, yeah.
So I totally relate to that. But what I think I've found over time is that, you know, identity is this very personal thing. Obviously, I carry many different versions of an identity, but there is also this part that connects us all, right? I mean, when you go back and you look at the different stories of humanity, no matter where they are from, you can say they're part of a shared collective human journey, right?
Yeah. But why Genghis Khan?
Well, you know, beyond the fact that he undeniably changed the course of modern history, he also has this incredible personal story. He didn't always exist as Genghis Khan. He actually started out as a person named Temujin. Genghis Khan was a name that he took on after he united the warring tribes of the steppe under a single banner. He starts out the second son of the second wife of this, you know, this local nomadic leader, tribal leader who ends up this chief gets killed, and then his father gets killed, and all of this is tied together with a love story. There's a woman that he falls in love with at a very, very, very young age. And ultimately, at one point, you can almost identify the singular moment where it was so intense for him that he had a singular choice about which way his life would go. And that was when his wife, Borte, was taken from him, and he was by the enemies of his father, and he was sent off, running from his enemies, and they chased him all the way to the top of this mountain called the Burkhan Khaldun. This mountain protected him because he was able to hide high up on this sort of rocky outcrop. But on the top of that mountain, you can imagine a person is sitting there contemplating their fate. He's got nothing. I think he might have had a horse at that time. But his wife had been taken from him, his enemies had surrounded him, and he was with nothing. But from that vantage point, he prayed to what is described as the Father Sky, or the god Tengri. And in a moment that might have defined human history, that moment where he decides that he's not gonna lay down and live a life of an outcast, but rather he would fight back and unify these warring tribes under a new set of rules, under a new set of ethics. And from there, within a few years, he had fought back and pulled together all those warring tribes, and then a few years later, that had expanded out and created what would then become the largest contiguous empire in human history. So why Genghis Khan? Well, for me, that's a story that I didn't really even know about. But it's a story that I feel like really pulls at the deepest parts of your own understanding of self, that idea of resilience, that idea of create your own fate, that you don't get to choose what happens, but you do get to choose how you respond. And that's the power of the imagination.
Very powerful.
That is, you should get an Oscar or something. I don't know. I want to give you something, man. Like that was awesome. What did it feel like being at the very spot where Genghis Khan's remains could be located?
It wasn't just about his remains. It's just about the spirit, the feeling of that mountain, and the sort of intensity of thought that went towards that mountain over centuries of human history. If you think about it, people like the chronicler Rashid al-Din from the Persian world, he wrote about this mountain. The stories of Marco Polo wrote about this mountain, right? Like, these things were described in history, and yet I was standing there when none of those folks were allowed to go there. Hundreds and hundreds of years across human history had speculated about what that mountain would feel like, and I was there, and you could feel it. You could feel this. Everybody spoke more softly when we were there. Things just felt more wild. There'd be wolves howling in the night. The mist would just sort of creep up the valley every single day. This is a very remote place. The most remote place I might have ever been. But you hear this sort of sound of a truck making its way up the valley. And before you know it, half a day later, it appears. And there's this stack of drums on the truck. And there's these 7 shaman that are there with their attendants pulling up, and they see us there. The only people that really are allowed to be there are essentially the shamans who still go and worship this very mountain. And, even though we had all this permission worked out with the Mongolian government and, all the scholars, the shamans, they didn't care. They wanted to know what we were doing there after 800 years of this place being forbidden. So I get asked to see the head shaman that night, and he's gonna judge my soul, basically, right? I approached at sundown. I had my colleague told me the sacred words to repeat. It's not even Mongolian, it's Proto-Mongolian that they're speaking. And I'm sat in front of this person at this shrine, and there's just like these little mosquitoes everywhere, and I don't even want to move my hands to wipe the mosquitoes off of my face because I'm stuck in so much fear. But the shaman's sitting there and he starts beating this drum, boom, 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 over my head. gotta imagine how intimidating that is. He's got this headdress on where you can't even see his face. It's just these long dreads hanging down off of this headdress with these big eyes painted into his forehead. And he's got this huge shawl with bells and all sorts of things dangling off of it. So he's beating this drum and he's flying around and he's and I'm sitting there knelt underneath him and he's beating it as hard as he can, and it's getting faster and faster and faster to the point in which it almost felt like my heart was in rhythm with the sound of the drums and my heart was about to explode because he was hitting it so fast that all of a sudden, in this cacophony of noise, boom, he falls to the ground. And then he sort of gets back up and you can't even see his eyes, but he's just sort of twitching. He looks like a bird. He's completely transformed. And in that moment, he starts sort of asking me these really simple questions. You know, why was I there? Who I am? What drove me to be there? I mean, really, these are the most fundamental questions of anyone's quest. Why? The why that's deep inside you. And I had to try to explain, but I'm explaining between four people. I'm talking about technology and non-invasiveness and all those other things, and he didn't care about any of that. He just wanted to know my intentions. You know, and ultimately at the end of it, he explained that he thought that I was the descendant of ancestors that had come from a valley nearby that was friends with the original tribe of the Mongols, and that I'd been sent to that mountain to try to tell the world the story of the Mongols, the story of Genghis Khan. I don't know how to interpret all this other than the fact that I was there in that moment, in the most maybe authentic moment of my life. And when I was having to explain what I was doing there, it came down to just the most fundamental question. Why? Why do we look? Is it for yourself? Is it for knowledge? What is it for? Is it to tell the world? Why?
Wow. That's deep.
That's very, intense. But Albert, Genghis Khan is not the only conqueror you had a close encounter with, right?
Yeah, that's right. No, I kind of got, I got more and more interested in these stories of people that changed human history, right? The next person I went and tried to find from a historical standpoint, try to learn more about was the first emperor of China. This person has, I think, maybe one of the most iconic tombs of all of the world. Maybe.
Wait, that's the tomb with the famous army of statues, right?
Yeah, the terracotta army, right? This unbelievable world built for someone's afterlife. I mean, it's really this crazy, crazy story. There's a person, this individual, who brought together all these warring factions, but was so obsessed with eternal life that he built this entire world to take him to his afterlife.
"1,500 years before Genghis Khan, another conqueror changed the face of East Asia. He unified warring kingdoms and became the first emperor of China. His name was Qin Shi Huang. founder of the Qin dynasty, who put an end to the centuries of war. His burial site could be the greatest tomb on earth.
The Emperor's tomb is right beneath my feet. Nobody's ever been allowed to fly here. This is unprecedented access.
The Emperor's tomb lies under this massive mound. The entire site is the size of Manhattan.
Can you imagine building this for yourself? For your afterlife? Wow. Wow. This is huge. It's so much bigger than I thought it would be. This is the Terracotta Army. 8,000 warriors buried over 2,000 years ago. One of the greatest wonders of the world.
Qin Shi Huang ordered his real army to be recreated in clay and buried with him, ready to fight his next battles.
Each face is individual, unique. Look at the scale of this place. Tells you a lot about the guy. His ego, his vision for his afterlife. What an experience. It's a really incredible feeling to be here, standing in a place where nobody really gets access. I mean, we're at the center, at the heart of this unbelievable World Heritage Site, which is, in a lot of ways, the symbol of my own cultural heritage, my ancestry.
But there's a mystery. At the time, China had no known tradition of building life-size statues. So, how did they suddenly create these 8,000 lifelike terracotta warriors? Art historian Lucas Nickel has studied the Terracotta Army in great detail, and he has an astonishing new theory.
Have you found an explanation?
Well, if we can't explain this as part of Chinese history, we have, of course, to look for a foreign source.
Right.
But we also have this. Have a look at that. These are sculptures.
Lucas believes the source to be the Greeks. He's brought photographs of Greek statues that were found in Central Asia. Statues dating back to the same era as the first emperor of China.
This is what the Greeks left in Central Asia. Yeah, that is just north of the Oxus River in southern Uzbekistan, yeah, just across the border from Afghanistan.
Forensic evidence is coming out of the site that I'm keen to investigate. Archaeologists have found a mysterious skull in one of the mass graves. It could be key to our investigation. I've sent detailed measurements of the skull to experts in Scotland's Dundee University. They're gonna reconstruct the head and trace its origins. Experts have spent weeks analyzing it. I'm about to find out what they've discovered.
Hey, Chris.
How's it going?
Chris, you sent us a model of what you've made, and I haven't seen it yet. So let's take a look. It's a little creepy, you know? I mean, staring at this person who, it's so lifelike. So where would you place him in your expert analysis?
There's so many shape features of the skull that are East Asian, and then there's this sort of bridge to the nose and this brow ridge. It's not common in an East Asian population. This is actually a Chinese skull from a medical specimen. So you can see the difference between this nose and this.
Oh, yeah. So it
Yeah,
is.
we're talking this brow ridge and nose here.
In the 3rd century BC, the Greek and Chinese civilizations were much closer than one might think.
If Lucas is right, then the first direct contact between East and West would have happened up to 1,500 years earlier than we tend to believe. It's an explosive theory, and if correct, it'd be rewriting the history books.
According to legend, the emperor grows increasingly paranoid. Fearing death, he orders his court to find the secret of immortality. And what they do is advise him to ingest mercury. Mercury is in fact a poison that slowly destroys the brain and drives a person insane. Qin Shi Huang dies in 210 BC. What happens next is described in a scroll written some 100 years later. It's a gruesome story of bloodshed and turmoil. The emperor's youngest son sets his eyes on the throne. To clear the succession, he eliminates his brothers and his father's concubines. Just 3 years after the emperor's death, the Qin dynasty is brought to an end.
So he united China, but his death was anything but glorious.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was definitely ironic, right? The very thing that he was trying to chase after, immortality, was actually what killed him.
Right.
Right? It was maybe the ultimate of ironies, right? But in reality, at the same time, he united China to become, in some parts, a legacy that remains today. You know, and when you look at the terracotta army, it's almost like a symbol of the cultural heritage of China itself. You know, again, it was another person who changed and shaped the course of human history. And for me, that's just so, I don't know, there's something so enticing about that.
Like, all big empires crumble sooner or later, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, that is something that I've seen. But it does feel like the more I explore different parts of the world and different versions of that rise and fall of an empire, it almost feels like I'm looking at different chapters of the experiment that is the human condition, right? Like different versions of how we organize ourselves, how we come together, and then sometimes how we fall apart. Actually, every time so far.
Do you think our civilization will disappear too?
You know, it seems inevitable that everything that starts also has an end. That is basically the one consistency, that everything in life is impermanent. But there is this hope that I have, which is that, you know, at least in my perspective of the world today, having grown up in the birth of the internet age in a place like Silicon Valley, that there's a connectedness now, right? There's a global human knowledge now that is tied together. And maybe if we can start to work together to solve big challenges, I mean, you saw it even recently, right? With the creation of a vaccine or the way that we must take on climate change. There are these things that connect us, these unifying problems that we might be able to solve if we actually use our connectivity for good. So that might be what we're doing here.
Right.
You know, it's like, that's what this is all about, is creating that community, that sense of purpose. I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you think that we're gonna fall as we rose, just like every other civilization so far?
Yeah, I think the robots are gonna take over. Terminator, you know what I'm saying? It's gonna be...
Are you a robot? I hope not.
You know, I can be a robot if you want me to be, you know.
Can you do the robot? Are you a dancer?
Oh, nah, I can't do it so well, but, Well, I mean, yeah, sooner or later, it's gonna happen.
I hope that it doesn't. I hope that we really can do what you were saying, Albert, is to collaborate and work together and become united and, all just save the Earth or save our planet. I really hope we can do that.
Yeah, it's all about teamwork,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about teamwork. Back to the teamwork.
Yeah.
Always about teamwork.
It's true.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if teamwork makes the dream work. So if we're gonna, save our future and allow ourselves to learn from the lessons of the past, then it will take teamwork. But that's what's so exciting about history for me, is that when you realize that you're on a long timeline of many, many different versions of these experiments and how we work together, then you get this perspective of, maybe how to make that teamwork really work. If we can do it in this round, if we can truly survive as a global society, then, it'll be through teamwork.
Yeah.
There's another irony to this in that when I was exploring the fate of a person who was just obsessed with immortality, in that same moment, I was also faced with a moment of my own confrontation with mortality. It was not more than a couple of months after I was there on the Terracotta Army's mound when I found myself in a pretty intense car accident. This bionicness that I am, was born out of a moment where I was really truly facing the realities of impermanence. And that journey, honestly, has been one of the most fulfilling and incredible experiences I've ever had as an explorer.
My life was changed forever. The doctors gave me a choice. I could either rehabilitate my mangled leg, but I would never really get back to normal. Or I could amputate my leg and try prosthetics. I gathered my friends to tell them about my decision.
And as I sleep through the night, they will take their knife and separate my leg from me. I'm going bionic, you see. I'm gonna be a superhuman man with a leg that can fly.
I chose to move on, and now I'm bionic.
Better watch out.
Wow.
It's crazy.
すごいね。
Yeah.
大変だったろうね。
いや、絶対大変でしょ。なんていう、精神的にというか、絶対いろんな壁を越えないといけないんだよね。
そうだね。Albert, what was it like having to choose to be amputated? It must have been such an incredibly difficult situation and tough decision for you.
It didn't. It was more tough for my friends and my family than it was for me. It felt like to me I was faced with a choice of whether or not to leave control to the surgeons or take control as an engineer. To be able to take on the aspects of your recovery as a problem to solve, right? And that may be why it felt more easy than people might think. But at the same time, I think I might have been channeling some of those experiences that I had had from the past, looking at people like Genghis Khan, right? When I was telling you guys about that moment on the mountain where he was faced with maybe a choice, but the choice was literally around perspective. That's what I think I was experiencing in that moment, right? Like, how do you take on a moment that is so fundamentally defining with as many different options of perspectives as possible? And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to go and take on this challenge, to take on this unknown, to be the explorer, but now in a very personal way.
It must have been really extremely painful to to amputate your leg, but also even after the surgery, how was that dealing with the pain?
Oh yeah, I got like a whole different reality now in terms of my understanding of pain. But it's funny because you don't remember actually what pain feels like. You remember the concept of pain, but you don't actually remember the feeling of pain. So for me at this point, you know, I can pretty much take on any level of pain with that objective view. And that's definitely become useful when it comes to, you know, like the worst bug bites in the world and all the other things that you deal with as an explorer. But there was this moment where I think I truly opened up a new understanding of the real frontier in science and exploration, which is the mind. There was a moment where I started feeling pain, incredible pain, but in a part of my body that wasn't even there anymore. I mean, literally in the air.
What?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no foot there anymore. There's no toes. There's nothing but metal and carbon fiber. But there was an excruciating amount of pain right there.
Whoa.
Where there is now air.
Wow.
It's crazy. In fact, right now, I can feel my toes.
You can feel
if
your
I
toes.
close my eyes, I'm wiggling. Oh yeah, I'm wiggling them right now. I'm wiggling my toes. I'm wiggling my pinky. I can totally feel them.
Wow.
So Albert, how did you deal with this, I guess, phantom pain? Is that what you call it?
Yeah. It's described as phantom pain. There was this incredible neuroscientist that I met. His name is V.S. Ramachandran. And he asked me this question. He said, do you really know where the body ends and the mind begins? And that's what I was facing. I was facing this moment where my mind was saying something was real, so real that it made me completely immobile because I was in so much pain, but it wasn't actually there. And so I started looking at all these techniques. Rama had figured out, as we call him, Ramachandra Rama, he had figured out how to use mirrors to trick people's minds into seeing their old limbs again. So they'd put mirrors between somebody's hand and their amputated hand, and they would be able to release the pain in their hand like this, do a trick in their brain, right? So we tried that. We used a mirror, and I was like, okay, well, I can feel this. I can release the pain. Because I'd spent, a month in the hospital under all these intense conditions, so all that pain was still there. But then every time you remove the mirror, the pain would come rushing back in. But as a scientist, as an explorer, it was like, whoa, this is cool. At the same time, it really, really hurt. It was like, whoa, this is crazy. This is the frontier. But then I had to find a way of letting my mind hold on to it. And that was all about exploring the realms of neuroplasticity. Have you guys heard of this concept of neuroplasticity?
No. I don't think so.
Basically, it's a fancy term for, your ability to sort of change the pathways of your mind. Wow. We do it all the time when we're learning new things, when we're learning new languages or learning a new route home. But your mind holds on to these pathways because every time a synapse fires, it's more likely to fire again. So over time, your mind creates what we call, in layman's terms, your ego, maybe, right? Your default mode. The way that you see the world and that the world is perceived within your mind. And it has a map of yourself as it has a map of everything else. So I had to break those pathways and take on new pathways. And I had to find a way to get there. And ultimately, what I discovered, and what I continue to discover, is that it's tied intrinsically to states of awe, states of wonder, states of flow, states of the mind that we describe as altered states of consciousness. When you walk into a Gaudi church, or when you're dropping into a big wave, or when you're playing music, when you're really jamming and you're really there in that ultimate moment of flow in music, your mind frees itself of its ego because you're in such awe that you lose yourself for a minute. And in those states, you can rewrite your pathways. And that's what I had to do. And I was able to do it in these incredible moments of awe, out in the deserts, out in the middle of nowhere, in these blank slate places that mean so much to me.
Has this affected your perspective on the way the mind works?
Yes, fundamentally. And so much of that experience has now tied itself into everything else that I see. All of the other places I go now, all the other realities I travel to now, I see that same thing. in our human story, in the temples, in the buildings, in the art, in the rock art, in the most simple parts of our creation, of things, of objects, of artifacts. I see that imagination that is born out of those states of awe when we break our egos and we take on our imagination. And that's what I experienced with this. Hey, you know what? Like, this is one more awesome opportunity to be an explorer, to take on that challenge more intellectually and more spiritually.
I really like your positive vibes, you know? I think it inspires a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, well, you know, I feel the same way, you know? That's why we're here together in the jungle, the virtual jungle, talking about all this.
It's a bit of a strange thing to say, but your artificial limb looks really cool. Like it's something off of Terminator, you know what I'm saying?
I know. I try to get the right shoes so it makes it even cooler. I'm like, okay. But you know, I do feel super grateful that I'm able to walk around, climb mountains, scuba dive, go on, you know, climb volcanoes and do all these things. And I know that it comes with privilege. I've experienced that. The first time I experienced it, I'd just come out of the mountains of Colombia, where I'd been hiking high up into the mountains looking for lost cities. But it was very, very difficult physically, and I was able to do it because of my leg. And then I came down onto the city below, and you know, sitting there on the beach enjoying a celebratory beer because we had just found this new lost little settlement up there. I saw this guy playing soccer on the beach, but on crutches, and he was just my age. He was exactly the same. We started talking to each other. He was missing the exact same part of his leg that I was missing. And we had this great time together, but I realized the importance of trying to not only acknowledge that privilege, but to do something about spreading the love, right? To try to change the dynamic of those who don't have access to those who do have access.
How has this changed the way you interact with other people with disabilities?
You know, I don't even think of it as a disability. I don't even like that term. It's more like it's more like just different, I guess. You know, I feel like everybody has different levels of challenges that they face. Some are more visible than others, and some are more hidden. And yeah, you could think of it as something that hinders your ability, or you could think about it as something that provides you perspective. I didn't know that I was going to experience the things that I experienced before this. I didn't even know really anything about being an amputee. But when I became one, I learned that I was part of a community that was much bigger than I realized. There's almost 40 million amputees in the world. And I realized it's a big challenge because, you know, it takes a lot to get a well-fitting prosthetic. But that doesn't exist everywhere. So I learned about these challenges that I might be able to take on as an engineer, or maybe as an explorer.
And you founded a project to help other amputees. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, there's a few of them, right? One is Project Limitless, and the other one is this Right to Walk Foundation. So Project Limitless, you know, that was born out of the jungles of Guatemala, actually, because when we were going into those pyramids and mapping them with different types of everyday technologies, we realized that most of the devices that are already out there can do some incredible things. Do you know anybody who doesn't have a phone with a camera on it?
I guess not anymore.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? But what we can do with the power of connected cameras like that is pretty incredible. So one thing we thought of was, let's use this idea of photogrammetry, which is what we were using inside the temples. And it's by taking a bunch of different pictures of an object from a bunch of different angles to create a 3D model. Now, the hardest thing about access to a well-fitting prosthetic is that everybody's body is different. So how do you get the resource to be able to scan somebody's body to create a well-fitting prosthetic when the amputees themselves are the most immobile population in the world? Well, we thought, why don't we just turn on that network of connected devices, which is already in everyone's pocket, to try to create these tools that allow people who are walking by somebody who might need help to be able to create that 3D scan, and then send that scan to a 3D printer, and then create something that might give somebody their life back. So I've got a group of students at UC San Diego who've been working on this for 3 years now, and it's been amazing. We've been able to print out legs that cost less than $20 to $30 in materials, and then I've been able to dance on those legs all night long. And it's just the beginning.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, and then the next thing is well, if that's one approach, and I got to work with folks in India at Jaipur Foot, which is one of the largest organizations around, giving access to disabilities. And I see these moments where it's like, yeah, we can build this new approach. But at the same time, there's also, this really nice carbon fiber thing that lets me go everywhere. So it's not the same thing as a 3D printed socket. So I've started a foundation called the Right to Walk Foundation, where we've raised enough money to give out legs, these very high-end legs to people who can't have access to insurance or don't have necessarily the funds to be able to pay for them. And we're trying to create this, this ecosystem of just empathy. I guess that's what it is, right? These projects and this experience and all these perspectives have made this experience maybe one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life.
Do you feel any pain now? I mean, it's been some time now, but
yeah, not really. I mean, I think I've been able to remap that brain, but now it's all about, right? Like what can I relearn? It's all exciting. Skiing for the first time, surfing for the first time, doing all this. It's like riding a bike again for the first time. It's these super fun moments.
Surfing.
Do you guys do you surf at all? Do you ski? Do you what
activities?
How do you get out into the world?
Since I was 14, I've been skateboarding.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so I know it's fun. I like it.
What about you, Samara? Do you
Yeah.
I don't know what gets you into the world?
Because I grew up in Hawaii, so we surfed all the time growing up. But yeah, I mean, I do yoga, I hike, I tried skydiving, which is really an adrenaline rush.
What? Wow. I'm grateful to live a life where adventure is very real, where the unknown is actually my job, and it's fueled by this thing, which was the inspiration of explorers that came before me and that are still around. And that's what I think we're here for, is to remind ourselves and our friends and everybody that might be watching right now that spark, that flame of curiosity is alive and it's inside you, and all you gotta do is see it and turn it on.
Stepping into the wild has given me so many unforgettable moments.
Hey, Albert, come on. Look over there. Is my there? Over there. Oh, it's an anteater. It's so slowly moving along, just hanging out of the trees. You hear the howler monkeys close by. So cool. This is the wild, wild jungles of Guatemala.
Exploring often means stepping into a new dimension. One example is when I was investigating sacred grounds of the Maya in Mexico.
I can't see the bottom.
It almost feels like we're in the basement of the world. You would never imagine when you're standing above that there's a whole world under here.
As we dive down, it's dangerous, but also magical and enticing. Until, emerging from the gloom, a victim of Maya human sacrifice, preserved in dark silence for centuries.
The
water's completely clear and so still. You're just hovering through this unbelievable cathedral of limestone. I felt like I was staring face to face with an ancient Mayan. I'll be right back.
Be careful now.
We think we know so much about our world, but there are so many things left to be discovered. Keep your heart and mind open. Chase the mysteries and step into the unknown.
Wow. This really made me want to go traveling somewhere. It's...
Oh man. Me too. I missed it already. How ridiculous is that?
Wow.
And we're sort of virtually traveling right now too.
Yeah,
virtually,
that's very true.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, there's a snake right underneath you. I can see it.
Don't do that. I mean, it's so real. I mean, there could be a snake right behind us.
Right there. Oh, there it is. Yeah, no.
Well, thank you, Albert, so much for your time and your amazing passion and storytelling.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, do you have a last message for everybody watching?
Ooh. Yeah, well, hello everybody. and I'm just grateful for the experiences that I've had as an explorer. And I know that you can have them too, because I think maybe the final message that I leave myself every day is to remind myself that we really are in this golden age of exploration, and that we have a chance every single day to rewrite our history for ourselves, to come up with our narrative that we will then take forward. So are you ready for your spark? What's your spark? What are you, what's the explorer in you gonna ignite?
I don't know.
What's my spark? What's our spark?
What's our spark?
Yeah. Think about it. Well, what is that thing inside you, your childhood spark that you might have put on the side? A lot of us grow up thinking that we're gonna solve plan B first. Mm-hmm. And our plan A is gonna be almost stuck in the back of our mind like a pipe dream. Right. But you know what? You can go for plan A. So what's your plan? What was your childhood spark that maybe ignites that fire inside?
What did I want?
What did you want to, B?
B?
Maybe?
You mean?
Yeah. If you never had to worry about all the societal pressures of what job you have, how much money you make, all those other things, what is the thing that drives you inside?
As a child, I wanted to be a skateboarder and a boxer for some reason.
How about you, Samiri?
I always wanted to be an astronaut when I was younger.
An astronaut?
Yeah.
Oh,
I even went to space camp.
Really?
When I was younger, yeah.
Wow.
But now I think my spark is music.
What's crazy is that we live in an age where all these things can come true. There's literally just today there was 4 non-astronauts, citizens, flying around in orbit on SpaceX's ship. I mean, this is an age where I think we have to start confronting our inner spark. We have to start talking about who we are inside and let that shine out. And I know that within all of us is that fire, that is the curiosity, that is the explorer, that defines what it means to be human. It's the same spark that I saw in the story of Genghis Khan. The spark that says that you get to create your reality.
Wow.
So I want to see you all in the field. Let's go. I've got some bug spray. I've got the snake gators. I've got a couple machetes we can use. And yeah, let's go do that. Let's go take on this collective challenge of our future together and be that team that we need to be.
Let's take the challenge, huh?
Yeah, let's be the spark.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna do my little invisibility cloak again. Are you guys ready? I'm gonna zip away.
We could
to Magic Land.
See you.
We can definitely see you.
We could see you.
No, you can't. No, you just gotta imagine differently. Okay, bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
마루미에장.
마루미에다요?
야, 바이바이 잘해요. この終わり方がダサいよね、本当に。
消えたね、でも。
I'm Albert Lim, a National Geographic explorer. Dive into my world as we unravel the mysteries of ancient history. Join us every Saturday as we explore the unknown.
土曜ミステリーファイル夜8時